You're listening to episode 68, Stop, Question, and Decide. That's right. Dr. M stops by the cafe for a second time, and this is our conversation about her project around mindfulness spending, how it got started, and why it's important for you to wear purple tomorrow on June 15th. Now, you can also wear purple on other days, and you can always be mindful of how you are spending your money, but let's hear from her around the background and why it's important to wear purple and be mindful of your spending. Sit back and enjoy my conversation with Dr. M. Hey, welcome to the Comm Cafe. I am your host, Dwayne Richards, and it is Dr. M. Dr. M is back today. This is a follow-up. Yeah, a follow-up to an earlier episode we did around millennials and their money mindset. But today we are talking about, it's a project day. Dr. M has an event coming up, and it's on June 15th. It's around consciousness on spending, but she's going to share a little bit more of the before story, how it all got started, and why it's important for you to wear purple on June 15th. Welcome to the Comm Cafe.
Hi, Dwayne. Thanks for having me. And I think I may have worn the wrong color today.
Yeah, you're wearing bright orange. For those who are listening, she is wearing bright orange. But hey, you were on the, you were with my mentor, Maura Bush, a week ago on the Magenta show, and you wore a fantastic shade of purple or violet that day.
Yes.
Yeah. So if people want to see you wearing purple, I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put a link to Maura's Magenta show that day, and they can hear a little bit more about the backstory and some of the in your as an author for children's books. They can listen to the previous podcast episode that you were on to get some more of the story. Today we're going to jump right in and just focus on consciousness on spending.
Yes. So that's the Purple campaign, and it's on June 15th. And a little, like you said, the backstory is that, so I write this weekly blog for the Kidonomics series. And I was 3 years ago, I was writing a blog, and the same day my daughters were going to school. They were wearing pink for anti-bullying, where they wear pink day at school. And I was talking about corporations, how we're subjected to so much marketing and advertising, and we're constantly being bombarded by stuff. And I'm like, you know what? They're standing up to bullies. We as adults need to stand up to bullies as well, and the bullies with the corporations and all the ideologies that make us think that we need certain things in our lives that perhaps we don't necessarily need, but eventually make us get into debt for one reason or the other. And so that's how the idea for the purple campaign came. And I'm like, well, you know what? Let's wear purple on June 15th and start being more conscious when we shop, when we buy. So the idea behind the purple campaign is to be a conscious consumer and practice pretty much financial mindfulness. And what that means is I have a little acronym: stop, question, and then decide. So to stop for a minute, and it doesn't have to be like a 10-minute pause in your day, but ask yourself a simple question: do I really need this? Or do I need this now? And you'd be surprised sometimes the answer that you get. And then at that point you decide whether you're buying it or not. But when you're deciding to get something, make sure that you're deciding that you want it. And it wasn't that the ad was so catchy that it got into your head, it got into your subconscious, and you're just going to do it because you've been pretty much brainwashed into getting it, or because you're doing it to have a certain image because your neighbor's got something, so you want to make sure you have it as well, so you don't feel less than or something like that. So the whole idea is kind of understanding, and central to this whole campaign is my core concept, which is net worth is not the same thing as self worth. And you know, the more I do talks and these types of interviews, I'm realizing that that is really coming out really a crystal point for me, and that is a central point in, I don't want to say the teachings, but the way that I approach financial literacy and the way I approach money management on the whole, because it's a central concept that we don't really pay that much attention to sometimes, and we really have to extricate those two. net worth is not the same as self-worth. And it seems like a simple statement, but when we dive further and further into it, we realize how much our identity is related to the things that we have, our material possessions, our physical objects, the car, the clothes, the house, where we shop, the things we buy. We tend to internalize that. So pretty much the Purple campaign is just that one day when we say, you know what, at least it should be a beginning. It's not just that day, but if you haven't done it before, this is the time to just be more conscious of the things that you actually need and want, and understand where you are in your life financially, and then you know move from that position.
It's
So that's pretty much what the Purple campaign is about.
yeah. And I was just writing a blog this week about that. What influences our buying decisions? So how do we let advertising, peers, even our values, so understanding what our values are, and also understand when people impact our values. So when do we allow other things to influence our values? So we let people, groups, our thoughts and our emotions also influence our values at the time, and just becoming aware of that. So it's perfect. I like what it was. It was stop, think, and decide. Was that right?
Yeah. Stop, question, and decide.
Don't think. Question.
On
You've already thought about it. Now question whether you want.
yeah.
Wonderful.
So the thing is, a lot of if you think about it, us as consumers, we're really at the short end of the stick, or we get the short end of the stick. Why? It's because marketers spend lots of money. There are billions of dollars that go into research for marketing. The color, the sound, the taste, the texture, the lighting, everything affects our psychology. Everything affects how we would gravitate to certain products. The crunch on the chip, that's not just by accident, right? The colors, the font size. So they go into a lot of work and a lot of research into figuring out how to position this product for us. And we go completely unarmed. We just walk in there, we're like really ripe for the picking. And so my thing with the blog especially, that's what I try to do. I try to kind of raise awareness for that. I'm like, listen, there's a lot of stuff that's out there, and if we're just going about unconsciously thinking about really what is important for us, then we get easily trapped into that mindset of, oh, you see a new thing and you have to get it, or there's a new version of something that you have that works perfectly well. Or you might know I'm talking about phones. It works perfectly well. You don't need to update necessarily. I mean, if you can afford to, of course you do, whatever. But I'm talking about the average guy who is perhaps working with a budget, or perhaps trying to make ends meet. You don't need to have every single upgrade or update of the devices, because it doesn't really say anything about you. But so it's about being practical in your daily life and not getting carried away by what others are telling you need to have or need to do.
Mm-hmm. And it fits into piece. I talk about what is the life that you want. So not what is the life that your parents want, your friends want. What is the life that you want, and then visualizing it, writing things down. Because if you write down something that's important to you, like maybe it's being a homeowner. If home ownership is important to you, then on Friday, when you decide not to buy a Starbucks, you're like, oh, I'll put this $5, $5 more go into my fund for my home, for my down payment. It's really to having those, it's establishing goals and the vision for the future that you want, so that when you make, and I think you talk about this in your books with your daughters, it's like, well, what am I, yes, it is kind of a sacrifice. What am I giving up today so that I can, it's the opportunity cost. So what am I giving up today for something in the future? Because we often we do it the other way. So I'm going to get it now. I'm going to buy something today. And what's that opportunity cost to say, if I spend my money today, what am I giving up in the future? So if I go to the movies today and then something comes out tomorrow, I've already spent my money on the movie, so I can't get something tomorrow. Well, we can if we use our credit card. And that's the slippery slope, right? Like, it's not about it's not about whether you can afford it, because anyone can access funds to get something. It's to say it's mine. It can be quite overwhelming, and I think that's where we talked about is young people. It's very overwhelming because they just like they must sit and see all the marketing, advertising, this and that. And they must like wonder like, do I leave the home? Like, do I leave my house today? Like,
It's an overwhelming amount of material that we're bombarded with. Once again, now with social media, it's not just like, back in the day, it was just on the television or, the billboards, but now it's in the palm of your hand, constantly 24/7. And so it's even more lethal now, and it's even more important now. Now, you mentioned a delayed gratification. So there are a couple of components I like to talk about, and that the first thing is, like you said, mindset, having the right frame of mind. And that without getting too technical about it, is like you said, understanding what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish. So what would be true for you is not true for somebody else, and what financial goals you have is not necessarily the same as your neighbor or your friend, right? And so getting very clear as to what it is you actually want. So it's pretty much making a plan, because you can't go somewhere, you can't reach a destination if you don't have some point to get to, right? You can't go from A to B if there's no B. You just be pretty much going around in circles. So that's the first step. The other thing is that knowing what you want, in the process of getting there, you might change your mind, or you might take little shortcuts, or you might go in a slightly different direction, and that you should be okay with that as well. So being flexible, having a general idea of what you want, moving in that direction, and being flexible to change when things happen. So how you translate that in terms of like the purple campaign is like, what, this week I am gonna make coffee at home. As I use that as a simple example people can relate to. Instead of spending $5 every morning to get my morning coffee, I'm going to perhaps take a mug from home and use that instead. But let's say a friend calls you up and you want to go for coffee. Of course you're gonna go. You're not gonna bring your mug with you, right? So you got to be practical at the same time, and be willing to kind of fall off the wagon for 2 seconds, but jump back on. Because sometimes people get this idea that, oh, I have to do this. This is my goal, and I'm going to go there, and then invariably you're going to stumble. Invariably you're going to slip up, and that's where you're going to say, okay, fine, I slipped up. Accept what it is. Get back on the horse and go again. So sometimes people want to, do really well with their saving and their budgeting, and they might slip up one time or two times, and they're like, you know what, forget it. This doesn't work anyway. So it's just about being consistent, because consistency is what will win the game. So you got to have a mindset, you got to have a goal, and you got to be willing to be consistent. And consistent requires discipline. You got to do it even when you don't want to do it. And if you have a goal in mind that you're somewhere you're going to get to, then it's easier for you to have that discipline, because the fact the goal itself should be motivation enough for you to get up and go do it, right? And the last point is just delayed gratification. There are 2 points about that. The first is that a lot of times, when people in a poverty mindset, they think of time, and I always find this fascinating. Time is very different to them. So, for example, if you're from a position where you're always lacking, when the first chance you get to buy stuff for yourself, you're gonna take that chance, because you don't know where the next dollar is coming from, right? So there's no planning. But this is the only way to get out of that kind of a cycle, poverty cycle. It's not the only way, but it's a very good way for somebody who is trying to, even if you have limited amounts, start training yourself to give something a little bit, put something aside. You don't have to spend all of it, and it's training like that muscle, that having that discipline, consistency, and delayed gratification. So understanding time from that perspective. So when you do get something, you don't have, not because, like, I gave my daughter, she made a bet with me yesterday and she won $1. Because she said the post office is closed, and I'm like, no, it's open. It's 8:30. They must be open. And we went there and it was closed. Like, oh. So I gave her the dollar. She's like, she's thinking what to spend it. I'm like, not because you have the money means you have to spend it, right? So that's an attitude that we need to be at top of mind. Not because you get money. Of course, if you need to meet your daily living requirements, you do that. But not because you have it, you have to spend it. And the other thing is, there are a lot of studies that show that when people have this discipline or develop this muscle, this skill of delayed gratification, it actually works not just with your finances, but in all aspects of your life, for your health, your career. And this test that was done in the 60s, the marshmallow test. I don't know if you've heard about it, where they put two kids in a room, no, or a couple kids in a room, and they put them with two marshmallows, and they're like, if you eat it now, you can have one, but if you wait like 10 minutes or something like that, I don't remember the experiment exactly, you can have both. So it was, I mean, for a child, a marshmallow sitting in front of you, and we can all relate to that, right? And what they did apparently that they tracked these kids later in life, and they showed that the ones who actually waited did better, had better performance at school, and had better jobs, higher paying jobs, etc. And it's not because you wait for the marshmallow, but it's because you have that discipline. And what it takes is a bit of discipline and fortitude. And it's difficult. Nobody's saying that it's easy. You know, if the steps are all there, what we should do, it's all laid out. We all know what we're supposed to do, but we don't do it because it's not that it's not simple to understand. It's just that it's not easy to follow. And that's where, you know, when you develop that kind of muscle for just pretty much being disciplined. And as you would agree with me, it requires, you require discipline in every aspect of your life. Whether you're building a business, in your career, you know, your health, especially if you know, diet and exercise, that's another big topic for people to have that delayed gratification and, you know, consistency and discipline. These are all the catchphrases or catchwords that people know that they have to do, but not always do it. So the purple campaign is like bringing that home in a fun way. So we're wearing purple, and it's like, okay, let me just be conscious in this moment and see what it is I really need right now. And it also, a lot of times, so, you know, the book series, a lot of teachers and principals would have read it. And one time I got a call from a principal who also happens to be a friend of a Montessori school. And she was like, you know, after reading your book, I was stopping for coffee. On my way home, I always stop by to get coffee. And I'm driving, and I'm like, do I really need this? And she said that day I didn't get coffee. And because it was just a habit that she would do every evening. She's going home, she'd drop coffee, but you don't need it. There are days where you don't need it. And then that's the whole purpose behind the purple campaign. Just think about it for a little bit before you actually make that purchase. And it's the first step in developing that muscle that later on will lead to hopefully greater things, financially and otherwise.
It's fantastic. I actually wrote that down. It's muscle development. It's muscle development and discipline. And someone said, "Oh, I don't have discipline." It's like, well, it's like everything. It's like it's a habit. Habits aren't, you know, success isn't something that's just you have or you don't have. Success is something that's learned and you know, through discipline and creating habits. Habits that don't serve you, and, you know, get rid of those and develop some new habits. You know, like we said, like Maura, like one of my mentors, Maura, says, like, when something leaves, like, fill it with something that's, or else the universe fills it for you. So you can, you know, fill it by choice or fill it, you know, by unintentional. So I would say, hey, let's get rid of like one of the habits that doesn't serve us around money, and then fill it with a habit that does. And then it's just I really like it. It's the muscle development that, how can we expect, we don't go to the gym. I don't go to the gym and try and bench press like 200 pounds. Start with just the barbell. Like, I'm going to start with the barbell and like work out these arms, and then, you know, work it up. And then as you work it up, then you have more confidence, and then you can make some bigger other decisions. And then all of a sudden the confidence just grows. And it all starts with discipline.
No, it's true. And that making that first step, I mean, not to be cliche, but you know, they say the journey of 1,000 miles begin with one step, right?
Yep.
And so, like, I always tell people, whether they be 15-year-olds I'm speaking to or 35-year-olds I'm speaking to, it's like, it's not going to be easy. And if you get that through your head, it's not going to be easy. And in, like, you know, you get all pumped up and motivated. Yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have this plan. I'm going to save. And then when you actually hit the ground running, you're like, I can't do this, right? And you will have that. And I think people need to remember that and to understand that. They need to know that, listen, I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you. It's breaking. I don't think we break a habit so much as we replace, like you said, we replace a habit. It's just, you know, stop doing that and do something in its instead. So instead of spending all the money, just take 25 cents of your dollar and just that simple act, put that aside. And if you consistently do that, you're actually developing that skill. And it doesn't have to be a chunk of it. My little daughter, I always use her as an example. A lot of things actually. But when she was playing the piano, when she first started, she saw some kids and they were playing like, really well and smooth. And when she started, she's like stumbling and she was so frustrated because she's like, I want to play like that. I'm like, but you can't start from here and you to get there. So sometimes it's frustrating when you see others who are playing the piano smoothly and you're like, but I'm trying and I'm still, I was like, practice. And now that she's practiced, she can play. And I'm like, I always remind her of it just as a life lesson. I'm like, when you start something, you're going to have a hard time with it. And if you really want it to play smoothly, you're going to have to put in the time and practice. And with finance or career or whatever it is, you really have to do that. And there's no getting around that. There's no app that can help you with that. There is no fancy website that can help you with that. You can read copious amounts of books, and that's great. You could have all the knowledge. But if you don't actually apply it and do what needs to be done, then it won't happen.
So good. And it's like anything. I actually did this 5-day sales challenge last week, and it was about figuring out reaching like 100 people and sending out, and then, but it was creating the habit. So the first, like, you say, oh wow, 100 people, that's a lot of people. Like that's like your mind just plays games. They're like, oh, it's 20 a day. I could do.
It was 100 a day or 20 a day. Okay.
Yeah, so it was 100. You're supposed to be like a total of 100 people, but you then say, okay, now you have your 100. Like send out your first 20 invites, and then what happens is you really got going. So I think the first day instead of 20, I think I sent out 25. Because once you got the momentum of through the first two were a little challenging, and then you send them out, and that's so. I'm going to take an idea that I just wrote down from you, because it's about giving introducing concepts to people. So it's more like a 5-day spending challenge. It's not about a challenge, but it's just to say, hey, for 5 days, like don't start with a month. Like sometimes we say, oh, you got to do like 30 days. I'm like, wow, that's really overwhelming. Start with 5, like Monday to Friday. Just make a note, like have a little piece of paper, a notebook, and like just write down when you spend money. And then we'll compare to all the auto things that we spend money on, right? Because we aren't even aware of how much we spend money on our cell phone or our internet or on our cable TV, because those are just pre-authorized payments and they just come out of your bank account. We're like, hey, time to take a little inventory. So we'll make that as part of it too. Maybe it's like, hey, let's take a little inventory. Like how much stuff is just on auto spend? And maybe do you really, and I have colleagues who've done this, like, I did this as well. I was like, do I really need that membership? As we get in, like, I really like the point what we just talked about, which was that muscle development, the discipline. And like I said, I think I'm actually going to put together this 5-day challenge around just being conscious for and being aware of where we're spending that discretionary spend. Like I have a choice of where I'm going to go for lunch today. I have a choice. Do I go to the coffee shop today? And it's all about choices, and they're really in our control. So I think I could put together a little 5. So if as the listener, the listener is interested, just message me at info@dwaynerichards.com or find me on Facebook, find a little link for this 5-day challenge. And I think it's something that's really going to be fun and just bring awareness. So I want to thank you, because we just talked about channeling. It's like, how do you channel ideas? And it's like, it's not really channeling. Just get these ideas and write them down on a piece of paper, and then put a little thought to them. Just let them smolder and brew a little.
Yeah.
And then if it's a good idea, we'll do it. All right. Where can people see or read your blog and get a little bit more information? June 15th is the whole thing. So yes, June 13th, purple. June 15th is Purple Day. You can wear it purple every day of the week if you want, but specifically June 15th. And where can they learn a little bit more about your blog? And you were just telling me about special little blog pieces that you're writing now with so where can we find that?
Yes, so if you go to radhamaharaj.com, right on the first page, you'll see the Purple campaign, and there's a link to the blog that I did in collaboration with my gym, actually, Win Fitness, have posted the last 5 weeks. And it's all about giving people pointers as to how to practice delayed gratification, how to be more consistent, how to be have practice delayed gratification, consistency, and having the right mindset and attitude. And so what it is, I've related those things to health because they're quite similar. Our financial life and our health and wealth. They go hand in hand. So that's the theme of the blog post. And so if you go to radhamaharaj.com, there's a direct link to actually everything that I do, the blog posts, the books, and all the other links you can find.
Wonderful. And I'm going to reference it on the show notes here as well as on my blog. So if people aren't sure how to get there, just go to the show notes. I'll probably post it in the Facebook link too, just so that people can just click on the link, make it easy for them. And wonderful. Thank you for being back. I think this is part 2. We won't say how long the series is going to be because we just, as things pop up, I'd love to have you back on. And as I'm working on pieces around my new program, I love bringing on experts or just knowledgeable people and it's around the cash flow and money, the mindset. Why not just leverage people in your network friends to just bring on guests that are I'm sure they love listening to you more than they love listening. No, they love listening to me, but they love listening to you because you shared so much great things about discipline and muscle development. And it does tie back to our whole gym conversation. Like you go to the gym to develop muscles, develop some money muscles, and then hop over to your blog and learn about the connection between your finances and your wellness. Wonderful.
Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you so much for having me on again.
Yeah, thank you. And she was wearing bright. Check I think I'll probably put this up on YouTube. You can check it out because she was wearing bright orange today. The energy, the creativity is all just radiating today with bright orange, adding some color to our conversation today on the Comm Cafe.